lovely people, it is Victoria. Welcome to my channel, or welcome back to my channel. This is another one of those times where I wasn't planning on making a video about something and I had a list of things that I want to do and something just shoots to the top of my list and I realize I feel really strongly about it and I want to film about it. So I only have about 45 minutes to do the first batch of this video. I actually have not finished this script, but I have 8 full pages done, and it's probably about halfway done because this is a monster topic, because this is the James Charles video, hopefully the only James Charles video I will ever make. I'm debating whether or not I want to put his name and picture in the title and thumbnail. I probably will, just for the sake of people knowing what I'm talking about. Yeah, so this is pretty current. It's one of those things where we had heard allegations and a lot of people didn't believe the person and they just didn't catch on, and then there's that reemergence and it suddenly has like kind of caught fire. So we're going to be talking about that. I'm also going to be doing my makeup at the same time, and I really want it to be clear that it's not meant to diminish the importance of what I'm talking about at all. I actually just have a little bit of time before I have to get ready to go to work, or like I have to leave to go to work and do errands and stuff before. I'm intending on filming a different version of my Fate of Ophelia dance cover thing that I did the other night, and I want to do like the full showgirl version where I'm wearing the sparkly dress that I just got and I'm in like full makeup. So I'm just kind of getting ahead of that. I'm planning on filming that probably when I get home tonight. So I'm going to be doing my makeup at the same time, and just want that to be clear. So we are going to be talking about the Ethan Rhett allegations. However, I just figured I've been wanting to film videos about James Charles for a really long time and just the whole lore, and I also feel like the whole lore kind of is a good context of where we are now, and there's just so many things that go into why people are so tired of him and why people are asking the question of like, why is this man not in prison? And I have a history of, as a former fan, I used to be a fan of his. I used to own his Morphe palette. I know, it's crazy. So before we really get into it, please consider subscribing. I have a goal of trying to hit 300 subscribers by the end of the year, and we are really close to it. I am 10 subscribers away at the time of me filming this video. Also, please consider checking out my EP, Tiny Sailboat. It is available on my channel, or also on my Spotify and anywhere else you stream music. I also posted a playlist on my Spotify of songs that inspire Tiny Sailboat if you'd like to get more familiar with my music taste, especially since I just posted my vinyl record collection video and I really like talking about my music taste and things that I like with people. Please consider hitting the notification bell to be notified whenever I post, which I am trying to do more consistently. About once a week is my goal, and I've been kind of decent at hitting that. And also please consider checking out my other social media, my Instagram, with kind of more, I don't post there a ton, but it's more like personally oriented stuff for the most part. And then my TikTok, which is kind of the stuff that I post on my shorts, but tends to be longer versions. Like for my mini covers, I tend to post the full versions on there because TikTok has less stringent copyright things about covers that are like over a minute long. A lot of times on shorts, they will restrict things that are more than a minute long. So a lot of like the full versions of my short form content are over on my TikTok, and I do like OOTDs pretty regularly. So yeah, just lots of fun stuff. And my website, it's my music website and also a blog that I should post on there more often, but tends to be a little more politically oriented content, but just whatever I care about. And a lot of times it is stuff that I also make videos about. But that was a super long thing, but as always, I will chapter this video if you just want to skip ahead to the actual topic. So, okay, I'm not gonna like really do a full-on get ready with me of like telling you what products I'm gonna be using. I'm gonna try to remember to show them on screen, but I don't want to like interrupt what I'm talking about too much. So basically, I just washed my face, used my sister's Neutrogena Clean Defense, I think, scrub, my Thayer's Witch Hazel Toner, and the St. Ives moisturizer, the collagen elastin moisturizer. It's amazing. That's like my 3rd tub of that stuff. It's incredible. It's like my favorite drugstore moisturizer ever. And I just realized I should also put on sunscreen, so I'm gonna do that. So I just washed my hands to double check that they're clean, and I'm just doing like grocery store brand sunscreen face lotion. So with all of that said, it's ironic considering in my record collection video, I was talking about wanting to make more lighthearted content, and this is not. And this is definitely about something that makes me upset, which is why it also might be helpful for me to be doing something with my hands while I'm talking about it. And it is kind of different from the content I want to make going forward, which has a lot to do with my sobriety journey and are very relevant to the holiday season. I really need to do those 2 videos for sure. So I am gonna pretty much do a walkthrough of James Charles and his history on the internet and a bit of an overview of his scandals. leading up to where we are now with the resurgence of the Ethan Rett allegations. The primer, I hate the packaging of it though, and the pump and everything. But not that these situations are the same in any way, but it reminds me a bit of the Brooke Schofield, Clinton Kane situation, just in the sense of like, Brooke had talked about it before and like fans of her were familiar with the story, but then just in the right time and place and on the right platform and the right motivation, it emerged and just went crazy viral and a lot more people became aware of it. I feel like that's also, it's more similar to the Adam McIntyre situation where like he had spoken about something previously and a lot of people didn't believe him or didn't take it seriously, and then I guess more evidence came out that is similar to this, I think, which is shitty, but now a lot more people have believed him, and also I think because it's picked up on the commentary YouTube side, it's being seen as a lot more legitimate, which is really shitty, and the internet is doing that really shitty thing it does where it all of a sudden decides to take someone seriously. So I think because it has gotten more prominent on YouTube as opposed to TikTok, where it seems like James has really found a second life, and people are just less aware of what he's done, or they just seem to not care as much, as opposed to YouTube, where I think he does have a generally worse history and his content does not do as well as it used to. But I did not realize the extent to which Ethan Rett had been just harassed and disbelieved. But it seems that now that he's gotten older, and then also just in the past few months since he tried to tell the story again, it seems like he's gotten a lot more strength to not be silenced and not back down, and is just trying to make sure his story is told, and I just respect the hell out of him for that. It is incredibly brave. So I'm going to somewhat briefly run through an overview of James Charles and his history of scandals, as well as my history with being a fan of his. Oh bro, I'm trying to use this primer more, but I really don't like it because it has these beads in it and the beads don't actually dissolve into your skin. It's this freaking skin ink serum glow filter. I don't like it. I don't like the packaging, and I don't really like the formula either. I honestly might just throw this out because this is not great. I got it in a BoxyCharm years ago. But not so fun fact, James Charles and I are actually the same age. He is just about 2 months older than me. So I'm also the same age, right around the same age as Sabrina Carpenter and Lizzie McAlpine, but I am more excited about those similarities for obvious reasons. But yeah, James and I are both currently 26. And I feel like that adds a lot of perspective into, like, from where I'm coming from. So James was born in May of 1999, and he's originally from New York. He originally started on Instagram and eventually moved to YouTube, and I think he started on one channel before starting the one that ultimately blew up. And he also, in addition to like makeup content, he also did a lot of music content, covers, and he was in like an a cappella group with his friends, and he's always had an interest in music, and I think he has always wanted to be taken more seriously as a musician than he has been, and I feel like that's kind of a little bit more of a sore spot for him than he leads on to be, because his singing has also, it will become a little bit more of a meme as we go on. I use this powder, by the way. But he went super viral for the first time around 2016 with his senior photo that went super viral, and the story was that he didn't like his senior photo, and so he asked to have it retaken, and he brought his own ring light, and his highlighter looked really amazing in the photo, and it just went everywhere. And it ultimately caught the attention of CoverGirl, who ended up making him the first ever cover boy. And he like was on the Ellen show, but later on it would come out and basically be confirmed. I think Thomas Halbert was the one that confirmed with screenshots that the story behind this photo was fabricated, and the photos were, to some degree at least, retouched, and that caused some controversy, especially because it was notable because of how amazing his makeup looked in that photo. But I think a lot of people either like didn't become aware of that or they just didn't care. Then the Ebola scandal happened. So in early 2017, when James was 17 and right about to turn 18, he was going on a school trip to South Africa, and he tweeted the infamous thing, quoting himself, saying, "I can't believe we're going to Africa, what if we get Ebola?" And his friend responded, "We're fine, James, we could have gotten it at Chipotle last year." And he tweeted it going, I think right before getting on the plane to go to South Africa. And this obviously became extremely controversial, and he was criticized for being very racially insensitive and ignorant. He then so quickly got a lot of heat for that and ended up deleting the tweet. I should have done this before my makeup, but he then posted like a notes app apology for it, saying that he was very ignorant about Africa and he's aware he fucked up, but ironically he also referred to Africa as a country twice in the apology, and that just speaks to a pet peeve of mine, and I imagine a lot of other people. It's really annoying to me when people just refer to Africa without referring to the specific country that they're talking about, like the Mean Girls effect, where she just says, we spent the last 12 years in Africa, whatever. I think she's from, in that movie at least, she's from Kenya, but in this situation he was referring to South Africa, but he just pretty much only referred to Africa, so that was ironic. Especially because he was talking about being ignorant and wanting to learn more about it. And again, a lot of people ultimately got over this, including people who it wasn't really their apology to accept. I became a fan of his shortly after, and I became aware of this, and I'm going to be totally real. I kind of did act like I had a right to accept this apology, and I didn't really consult or listen or seek out the opinions of people who were actually affected by this ignorance. CoverGirl did ultimately end up dropping him shortly after because of this scandal and the fallout. So right after this is when I became a fan of James McGentle. Yeah, like I said, I wasn't initially aware of the scandals, but once I did become aware of them, I kind of didn't take them as seriously as I should have, and I will own up to that. I was like, he apologized, he's young and dumb, and he admitted he was wrong, and kind of acted like I had a right to accept these apologies, especially like mainly for the Ebola thing. And this is around the time that I first really started getting into Tana's content, and it was right before I got really into Shane's content, so one could argue my taste in content was questionable, but I really did enjoy a lot of his videos, like the one where he was drawing Demi Lovato, the one where he recreated Jenna Marbles' everyday makeup tutorial, like the beauty battle he did with Shane and Ryland, the collab he did with Tana where they were riding in a helicopter. And to be real, like in a lot of ways, I kind of looked up to him as someone around my age who had become self-made in the content creation space and who just seemed really driven. And he seemed like kind of snarky at times, but in a fun way. But even actively watching his videos at the time, I wasn't really aware of the role that Tati Westbrook played in his come up and boosting him. I'm not sure exactly when she took him under her wing as far as like before or after he got picked up by CoverGirl, but she played a huge role in him getting like a better management deal, getting more monetized, getting a lot of exposure. She had him do her wedding makeup. And I am planning on doing a video talking about like my history as like an OG beauty guru fan, but I honestly was not really aware of Tati and her influence and her reputation. I didn't really watch her content, but at the time especially, she was known as a very reputable, trusted source for information, and she was also known as being very non-problematic and just never really getting involved in drama. And some point, I think like 2018, 2019, she started a supplement company called Halo Beauty, that their main thing was hair, skin, and nails supplements, and that will become a lot more relevant later. Even in his content that I was watching like as a fan of his, it was pretty much like a running joke how desperate he was for a boyfriend. He would kind of pass it off as a joke, but it also seemed like he meant it really seriously. He would talk about in like his Valentine's Day tutorial being forever alone and how he hated being single, how he wanted a boyfriend. And he mentioned this like in collabs with people that I watched at the time, like the video he did. Jenna Marbles recreated his Valentine's Day tutorial, and she mentioned it a lot of like thinking it was really sad and being like, you're so young, like you're gonna be fine. And then in the collab video that they did, she was like, James, you're young, like it's gonna be okay, you'll find your person. And the video he did with Shane and Ryland, like, they were trying to boost him up, be like, you're successful, you're young, like, you'll find your person, it's okay, but maybe stop going for the straight guys. And it was like a thorough line that he would talk about getting into deep with straight guys, pretty much only having crushes on straight guys, and kind of joked about thinking that he could turn straight guys, having like situationship type things where he was the secret and guys would hook up with him but still identify as straight. And I'll give him the benefit of the doubt and say that maybe he was confused by those people into thinking that he could convert them, but that's going to become a pattern that we see later on, to the point that, like, I don't really think I could give him much of the benefit of the doubt. But he would get kind of called out for that, of like, you can't turn someone straight, and then he would respond again, seeming to joke, being like, not with that attitude. And again, it was kind of easy for him and other people to kind of write it off as it being a joke and kind of self-deprecating, but looking back, it seemed like that was coming from a very real place. So this is kind of unrelated, but it is a side note that in the collab video that he did with Shane and Ryland, looking back, he made a comparison, or like drew a parallel to Ryland that in retrospect I think was very insensitive. So pretty much Ryland was telling the story of how he was hacked and had his nudes leaked without his consent, and was finding out because he was on a plane and he had his phone like on airplane mode, and then as he was landing he was getting all these messages of people telling him that his nudes had been leaked. And then James randomly goes, that's exactly how my Ebola scandal happened. And maybe it's a small detail, but I feel like that's very indicative of him and his tendency to make everything about himself, and also the way that he seemed to view his Ebola scandal, even though he talked about it as something that he did and the fact that he fucked up. But the fact that you would draw a parallel between you getting called out for something that you willingly tweeted to someone essentially like, is it revenge porn, but like having their intimate photos leaked without their consent. And I believe Ryland was also being like threatened or blackmailed at the same time. I'm not 100%. But the fact that you would draw a parallel to that when you're hearing a story that is like not about you at all, but it kind of almost to me insinuated that you view that as like something that happened to you. Maybe I'm taking that too far, but it was just, it seemed, you know, time and place. Maybe don't make that comparison when you are hearing someone talk about something that happened to them. And like, regardless of how you feel about Ryland Adams, what happened to him in that situation was inexcusable and terrible. And yeah, it just seemed in very poor taste. So that's kind of a small detail in the story, but I did not really I haven't seen anyone talk about that, but I feel like going forward, that is going to be a pattern that's kind of supported about James's tendency to sort of view himself as a victim and make a lot of things about himself when they are not. So pretty much this leads us to early 2019 and I have something in my eye. The pre-Bi Sister buildup. From what I remember, I don't remember exactly like the timeline of this, if it like the Sisters World Tour controversy and then the Coachella controversy, but we're going to start with the Sisters World Tour. So there was a huge controversy about the fact that he was going on a world tour and the highest level of VIP tickets that he was selling were like $500, which a lot of people were comparing this to like the top artists in the world, you know, Beyonce tickets, Bruno Mars, and saying that they were more expensive than that. But to be fair, I don't know if they were comparing VIP tickets from those artists or if they're just saying, you know, VIP to James Charles is more expensive than a Beyonce ticket, which is a point to make in and of itself. But people were drawing comparison stat and saying that was terrible. James responded in a just stereotypical notes, I don't know if it was notes app, but he kind of amended the ticket pricing page and said that he wanted it to be accessible. He was disappointed that people were disappointed with the prices. He actually said he wanted the tickets to be accessible, but he also said that the listed prices were their prices, implying that they were come up with, like, his team came up with them and said, you know, if there are extra charges those are going to be specific to the venues and we don't have control over that, but these are our prices. So kind of implying that he did have control over the prices, and he didn't actually really address, not that I could find at least, he didn't address why exactly they were so expensive. Just saying he worked hard on the tour, and he's insinuating he wants to make it worth people's while, but didn't actually really address anything. So that was a controversy of people being like, you need to get over yourself, like you're doing makeup and singing. And that was when his singing was definitely had become a meme at that point. And sometime right around this time, Gage Gomez came forward because James had gone to weekend one of Coachella. Oh my God, I have something in my eye, I don't even know. James had gone to weekend one of Coachella, and he was pictured cuddling and kissing this dude that people didn't really know who he was, and someone had asked, are you still single? Like, is this your boyfriend? And James responded and said he was very much still single, and said that he had been used for a free ticket by a disgusting con artist. So according to the story that Gage would later tell, Gage initially reached out to James privately and asked him to take this back because and just clear his name, because he was making a pretty heavy allegation and claim against his character. And James apparently refused to do so, and actually, according to what I found, he asked Gage to not make a YouTube video, and apparently tried to make a threat of like what would happen if he did. But Gage and James are like tripping me up. Gage ended up making a video that I watched pretty soon after it came out, and he was telling the story of how they got in contact. I think James found him like on Instagram or something, which is going to be a pattern that we see come up a lot more later on. But Gage apparently made it very clear that he was not sure of his sexuality. He wasn't sure if he was straight, he may be bi, he was like bi-curious, and didn't want to make any promises. But I think like James offered to pay for him to go to Coachella, and Gage just wanted to have the experience and also was willing to try and just see if there was a connection there and see what happened. So they ended up kissing and cuddling and stuff like that. He also tells a story of James apparently crying and saying that the only thing that would make him feel better is if Gage kissed him, and Gage ended up kissing him in that moment, and then also willingly kissed him a bunch after that, but came to the conclusion that he was straight or just not attracted to James basically, and just said that he didn't think it would be best for them to be together. And I don't know if he said they should just be friends or whatever, but he basically just didn't return his affection and advances. And that is when things apparently turned really bad, and James started insisting that he had used him. Gage also included screenshots in which he was saying, some people just aren't meant to be together, and I think that's, you and me, I wanted to have an open mind, but it just didn't end up working out. I just don't feel what you feel. And James just started going with the narrative that he had used him for a free Coachella ticket. Okay, I have like about 10 minutes before I need to go, so I'm going to see how much of this script I'm going to get through. So, 7-Eleven brand lip balm. But also, this is kind of a blur of things that happened. I'm not sure if it was Gage that released this, but around this time, I think some other people had kind of started coming forward about their interactions with James as well, and I remember one of these screenshots being him telling someone that they weren't bi when they were saying they weren't sure of their sexuality, and I think there also was something about him telling someone that they weren't straight either, but I really remember seeing something about him telling someone they weren't bi, like telling them what their sexuality was. And he seemed to happen to interact with a lot of people that didn't seem 100% sure of their sexuality, but it still, seems pretty inappropriate to try to, like, mansplain or just, explain someone's sexuality to them. It could have also been about the dude that we're going to mention right now and come back to later. So right around this time, he released a collab video with Nikita Dragon where they talk about boys, essentially, and they talk about both being attracted to hot, masculine, straight guys. This is party line. Hot masculine straight guys. And then James tells the story of his interactions with someone who later turned out to be Sam the waiter. So it was someone who initially identified as bi when he first started talking to him. And they were talking a lot, they were attracted to each other. He offered to get a hotel room for them. They met at this hotel room. They ended up making out for an hour. He ended up leaving. They were talking about, I don't want to really do anything, and James respected that. And apparently this dude kind of was going back and forth about what his sexuality was, and James apparently got frustrated and said, I don't think you're straight. I think that was it. Saying it could have been bi, but I'm pretty sure it was I don't think you're straight, because of how back and forth he was being. Makeup is pretty much done, so this is probably going to go a lot quicker now, getting through the rest of this script that I've written so far. So around this time, he tweeted something like, I'm doing okay, or I'm hanging in there, or something like that. And I just got really frustrated with everything that had come out so far with Gage and everything. So even though I was a fan of his at the time, I had unfollowed him at this point, and I responded something super sarcastic, like, yeah, because denying someone's sexuality and villainizing them for coming forward about you making them uncomfortable is probably so stressful for you. Thank God you're okay. Something like that. And then he blocked me for that. And back on my old channel that has since been deleted, I made a video just talking about James Charles blocked me, and I just thought it was the funniest thing. We then go to Coachella weekend 2. So because Gage was apparently so evil, he had just completely ruined all of James' memories from Coachella weekend 1, and he just couldn't even look at the pictures anymore and enjoy this memory because this evil con artist had totally just tainted his entire experience, because James is not melodramatic in any way. So he had attended weekend 1 with an artist pass, but he decided at the last second to attend weekend 2 with his friends, but he didn't have time to form a connection with a brand in order to get an artist pass, so he had to settle for VIP. So quick thing, with the Coachella, VIP I believe is the highest level that you can get for paying tickets, but there is an artist pass that gets you a higher level of security, but they are not available to the public. You have to have a connection with either a brand or an artist that is performing at the festival. And he didn't really have time to pursue a brand deal or anything like that on his own in order to get that, so he got VIP, and he was getting mobbed a lot, so he reached out, just spur of the moment, to Nikita Dragon, who had recently done a Sugar Bear hair sponsorship, to see if she could connect him with her contacts at the company in order to get a contract with them and do a brand deal with them, and she did. So in that moment, just so instead of maybe leaving Coachella or something, he instead got into a contract with Sugar Bear Hair and agreed to promote a product that, for what we know, he had not tried and did not know was okay, but he got into a contractual agreement to promote this product that also was a supplement gummy that you ideally should try for a while before realizing whether or not you actually like it and want to endorse it, which that's something that Smokey Glow pointed out was that's super crazy unethical. It's just to get something that you want from a brand, you're just okay, I'll promote your product, just give me the tickets. So Tati later on is going to talk about you could have just left the festival, which people were that's so unreasonable to expect him to leave the festival, but honestly you already went. I feel it's not that crazy unreasonable. Yes, you pay for VIP, but you already went, you're crazy rich. It's just, it's shitty to me that he would agree to promote something that he hadn't tried at all and had no reason to believe was good, and got into a contractual agreement to promote it to his followers. So that's a small detail. But he ended up promoting, specifically, I think they're sleep gummies. He was talking about, this helps with my anxiety because I'm so anxious, and this helps me sleep. And it's for all we know, in my opinion, my theory, you were just given a script with that in it to say. And it speaks so much to the unethical nature of just fucking influencers and sponsorships and everything, but that's a whole other thing. But he stirred up a lot of backlash for the fact that he had supported the direct competitor of his very close friend and mentor's brand. And also Tati had very boasted that, her company was the best and they had the best ingredients and they were the most ethical and whatever. And it's we have no reason to actually believe that. Of course you're going to hype up your own brand, but she was just, he was promoting this garbage company, and that's, what she would go on to say. I'm getting ahead of myself. But she posted this Instagram story basically crying about the fact that she supports everyone and she just tries to do the best for everyone and they don't ever return the favor, and she just feels really lost. Pretty much subtweeting James. that obviously made a lot of people way more angry at James, but then Gabriel Zamora criticized her for crying and being like vague about the situation and told her basically to get on the internet and talk about it, which she was so upset about it, which she herself will basically say that interaction was the like final straw that made her make Bye Sister. So we get to Bye Sister, which was stylized in all caps and was posted on May 10th, 2019. I may or may not have been high when I first watched this video, and I think I remember it being recommended on my homepage, as I imagine it probably was for a lot of people. I watched it the day it came out. I'm pretty sure the night it came out. Looking back, I have a lot of conflicting feelings about it. So she had this montage in the beginning, just really stressing how much she had been there for James, how much she had supported him, how much she pushed his Morphe code, all this. Then pretty much said this wouldn't have really happened, and she didn't actually want to talk about it, but Gabriel Zamora dragged her out on the dance floor. It's like, girl, you made a super vague video crying about this. Like, you were already talking about it on the internet. Just because you didn't name him doesn't mean you weren't talking about it. But she really tried to be like, I didn't want to actually talk about this, but they're making me talk about it. She made some valid points that later on people were like, oh, Tati was right, but then she'll end up backpedaling on them anyway. But she really tried to play the both sides thing of like, I don't want to talk about it, but it's like, you literally did. So anyway, so much disingenuous, like hypocriticalness and from everyone involved, honestly. But she was talking about the main focus of this video was how she felt betrayed by him promoting Sugar Bear hair, but like an added layer, she added that another big reason why she was done with him and could no longer support him were the things that she had both witnessed and the things that she had heard about his behavior towards boys and young men, specifically straight guys, and had the several iconic lines, including cracking someone's sexuality is not an escape room, saying, you tried to trick a straight man into thinking he's gay yet again, and somehow you're the victim. And then the obvious sound bites of sucking dick and cock, and oh my god, time and place, and of course, and you did it at my birthday dinner. I feel like, and you did it at my birthday dinner is like one of those lines that if you just like say it out loud, I've never done this, if you just say it like in a coffee shop or something, the way that people react to that, like that is how you know if someone is chronically online or not. That is like the vibe check. So she was saying she didn't want to have anything to do with him anymore, and he was too far gone, and she wanted this chapter to be closed, which is ironic because this ended up opening up an entirely new chapter. She also criticizes James' mom for thanking her for taking care of her boys and saying, you need to come to LA because your boys need you, which that became kind of criticized by some people, but also some people said she was very valid for that. She also said their friendship wasn't transactional, even though she like continuously just went on these like listing all the things that she had done for him and patting herself on the back for, James sat down and got you a better deal, and we did this and we got you more money and all this, but their friendship wasn't transactional. Okay. So this ended up sparking the Bye Sister backlash, where the main kind of focus was obviously like the behavior he was accused of. And she, even though she didn't use the word predator, she didn't explicitly say you are a predator. She described behavior that I think the vast majority of people would agree could be described as predatory. She was saying you are using your power, your fame, your money to get people to behave sexually in your favor, essentially, and you are threatening to embarrass them, you're threatening to ruin them, you're threatening to embarrass them, and it's not okay, and things like that. So she was accusing him of taking advantage of people, using his access, money, power to manipulate them. So this, sparked the backlash, and we had the viewing parties of people watching his subscriber count plummet in real time, which then inspired Social Blade to take away the live subscriber count feature because of this, of those watch parties. James posted the Tati response video, which is like one of the most notoriously awful apology response videos ever, where he had the most infuriating mouth sounds. If you have misophonia, it is a fucking nightmare. So Tati, sometime around this, posted why I did it, saying that she didn't want him to get too much hate, but she just wanted to close the chapter, basically trying to play both sides. Okay, lovely people. We are like 2 days into the future, okay? It's been a few days because I wanted to finish this script before I continued filming this video. At the point you last saw me, I was just about 6 pages into what was an 8-page long script and went up to the beginning of the 2021 allegations. I've now finished the script. It is just over 32 full pages long, okay? It is almost twice as long as my K-pop Demon Hunters video script, which was, I think, the longest script I'd ever written at that point. This is by far the longest script I've ever written. I really feel like this video is probably going to end up being about 4 hours long, but I'm going to see how big of a stretch I can get into with filming now and just how much of this I can get through, because if you thought my Colleen Ballinger video was thorough, buckle the fuck up, bitch, okay? Because we are going through, I'm pretty sure we're going through everything. If there is anything notable I left out, like, I will be eager to hear it. So there were a few things that are kind of out of the timeline that we've established so far that I did want to add in for like context. So a big thing that James was a part of when he was like successful and things were good was he was a part of the Sister Squad with Emma Chamberlain and the Dolan twins. And they were like majorly huge. Like their collab videos would get tens of millions of views. And just for context, like I would consider myself an Emma Chamberlain fan. I don't watch her content super consistently, but I definitely have like a soft spot for her. But I've never really watched the Dolan twins. Absolutely no hate to them. I just never happened to watch their content. I never really sought it out. I probably watched the collab videos that they posted on their channel, but that was about it. And within the Sister Squad, there was this dynamic of James consistently hitting on and flirting with Grayson Dolan specifically. And they would later claim it was all pre-planned jokes and everything, but yeah, and that was something like some of the fans would be kind of uncomfortable with it, but it was kind of understood in the fandom as being a joke between them because Grayson seemed okay with it. But I also found something super interesting. So apparently in November 2018, so before Bye Sister, James had mentioned that he had previously had, I said he had had a dating app on the account Raya. That is out of order. He had an account on the dating app Raya, but he, quote, got bored and deleted it. And I personally just wonder what made it boring. Maybe allegedly interacting with people who were less likely to be impressed and influenced by your large following. He also stated that his Tinder kept getting deleted because also his Hinge, he would later say his Hinge as well, would get deleted because the apps would think that he was a catfish, even though I assume he was verified. And the response in comments was always for him to join Raya, but I guess he did that and found out it wasn't for him. Weird. And we will circle back to the Raya thing when we get to an open conversation. Yeah, I think it's an open conversation. I was wondering for a second if it was an honest conversation. It's open. I also forgot to mention that at one point around 2017, he started working with Morphe really consistently and started famously saying, use code James for 10% off, to where it became like kind of like a meme, which I actually did at several points, to be honest. I bought several Morphe products and used code James for 10% off. I was influenced. I honestly, side note, but I actually bought one of Jaclyn Hill's Vault palettes, the Ring the Alarm palette. That was actually a really good palette in my opinion. Not all of the colors were as pigmented as the other ones. Like, I remember Bomb Ass was like weirdly not super great. But also I was more so influenced to buy that from Sophia Nygaard's video of combining all the Beauty Guru eyeshadow palettes. So she more so influenced me to buy that specifically, but I did use code James for 10% off. Anyway, he also influenced me to buy certain eyeshadow brushes, and I really didn't end up liking them very much. I felt like they were pretty scratchy. But we are getting away from the point. But he also created a palette with them that I did own at one point. I wasn't super impressed with the formula. I found it to be pretty powdery. I guess it is kind of related, because I'm talking about also my history of being a fan of his. So the palette naturally sold out, and it was being resold at really high markups. And there were some mini controversies. I didn't do that intentionally, but that is funny. Regarding this that we can review really quickly. So there was a TikToker, her name was like Lauren something, and she did a video destroying her palette that she had bought with her own money. Okay, she did not get it in PR. James was saying some shit like, some people can't even get the palette and it's just gross that you destroy it, basically. Meanwhile, he literally did a video with Jeffree Star doing the exact same thing and destroying his own palette, but okay. Also, Cody Tyler, who went by Cody Rance and would later become infamous for their involvement in the Colleen Ballinger situation and sitting on receipts that would have vindicated Adam McIntyre like 3 years prior, but only doing so when it benefited them and they could get something out of it, and then trying to make themselves the victim. That whole thing. But at the time, the only thing that I had known about them up until that point was that they did a video around the time this palette came out screaming about how the pink eyeshadow stained their lids pink and was like irritating their skin and how it wasn't adequately disclosed. And then James responded in a super condescending way, saying that the eyeshadows were pressed pigments. And I don't remember that being super widely disclosed either, honestly. Like, maybe it was, I don't know. But also, even if it was, to assume that everyone knows how pressed pigments work beyond them just being more pigmented is kind of a stretch. But apparently everyone worth a damn knows that red and pink pressed pigments are going to stain your lids, which I didn't know at the time, to be fair. I'm not exactly a makeup artist, but this palette was like, it was marketed to people who love makeup and wanted to pursue their artistry, but also it was literally, I don't know if the name of the palette was Embrace Your Inner Artist, but that was like the tagline of the collection. But I feel like there was also an accessibility trying to be accessed when marketing it too. Like, there was an approachability to it of like, anyone can find their inner artist and make a look with this. So to just assume that everyone would have the same frame of knowledge going into it was assumptive. To assume that was assumptive. So now, I think that is all the background knowledge that I wanted to add in. So we're jumping back into the Bi Sister saga. So 2 days after Bi Sister drops on May 10th, on May 12th, we get a video from Sam the waiter. This Sam guy would later admit that he did start talking to James out of curiosity, but he ended up stringing him along past the point of realizing that he wasn't attracted to him, pretty much because his friends and family encouraged him to preserve the connection in order to get ahead, which is shitty. There is no question about that to me. He also added in this really unnecessary detail about James being the worst kiss he'd ever had and had like using way too much tongue and just shit that did not need to be said on the internet. And also maybe you not enjoying the kiss as much may have had something to do with the fact that you, for all we know, you already knew you weren't attracted to him at this point. So maybe that had something to do with it. That was like, yeah, I fucking hate James Charles, but like I will admit when other people in this scenario are being shitty. So overall, though, Sam does corroborate the claim that everything that occurred between them was consensual. He said that they were in a hotel room. He told him he didn't want to do anything, and he respected that, and they just made out, and then he ultimately left, and I don't remember him ever saying he felt any kind of pressure or anything like that. He said everything was consensual, just that he wasn't into it. During this time, though, Jeffree Star jumped on the bandwagon saying that Nate and him had banned James from their house and that everything Tati said was 100% true. I think that same tweet may have been when he called him a sexual predator, but he definitely called him that when he got in a fight with James' brother Ian. When Ian put out this very innocuous tweet just being like, why do people act so tough on the internet? Talking, I guess, subtweeting bullies that he was personally dealing with. And then Jeffree just goes, why is your brother a sexual predator? Why did you move back to New York? Like, shut the fuck up or something like that. Like, just super nasty. And Ian, I think, was literally like 17 at the time. Like, and Jeffree is just fucking Jeffree and was, you know, in his 30s and pathetic, but whatever. So at this time, Zara Larsson also jumped on the bandwagon. And this is going to be like a little detour, like side note to this story, because honestly, her involvement in this still rubs me the wrong way. And I'm going to talk about why. So again, I fucking hate James Charles to this day, and her behavior still rubs me the wrong way, and that rhymes. But two things can be true at the same time. That also rhymes. Okay. So when everything was going, when everyone was mad at him, she tweeted saying that she was cackling because James had hit on her boyfriend multiple times in the DMs, knowing damn well he was straight. So she tweeted this without actually like fact checking anything, double checking anything. She later her boyfriend actually had to go to her and correct her and show her the DMs that James had sent him, which were like super innocent. It was like one, maybe two. DMs, and it was something very innocent, like, hi, how are you doing? Like, or like maybe saying he was cute. I don't know. It was like nothing explicit, nothing even really that flirtatious. James would then very rightfully, in my opinion, call her out for the hypocrisy that she was displaying, considering she met her boyfriend by very openly thirsting after him on Twitter and did not seem to know if he was in a relationship or not. Literally, like, saw a photo of him and was like, who are you? What's your name? Where are you? How do you like your eggs in the morning? Something like that. Like, very openly thirsting after him when he very well could have been in a relationship. But she then kind of later on gave this like non-apology in captions to these pictures where she talks about completely unrelated things. And she also responded to him on Twitter saying like, oh, I was wrong, I didn't have all the facts straight, but also you messaged him when it was very odd. Because James tried to say that he didn't know that he had a girlfriend, and she tried to like call bullshit on that and be like, he posts me all the time, like, I really find it hard to believe you didn't know we were together. And it's like, girl, I'm pretty sure he literally said hi. Like, calm the fuck down. Apparently it was a simple compliment, and Zara herself later corrected herself, saying that it was only one DM and some comments under pictures, and the message itself really wasn't that bad. So he sent an innocuous DM to someone that just happened to have a girlfriend. Like, God forbid a gay man DMs and compliments a man that has a girlfriend. Like, okay, this really is not the gotcha that you think it is, babe. And of course she's like trying to lump that into an apology, but also a non-apology, being like, it's also a pattern of behavior that you're displaying towards other people that's really concerning, but it's, you know, all love. I have nothing against you, and the hate that was launched against you was definitely rooted in homophobia, and that wasn't okay. Yeah, babe, you are contributing to that homophobia. You are continuing to contribute to that homophobia by insinuating that, also, like, calling bullshit on the fact that this dude didn't know that your boyfriend was with you, which, like, maybe he didn't. Like, get over yourself. I'm sorry. Maybe he saw one photo and just sent a compliment to him. That can happen. But also, like, even if he did know, that he's, like, threatening your territory by literally giving a super innocent compliment as a gay man to a dude with a girlfriend, you are perpetuating that homophobia. And you actively got on a hate train bandwagon without having all the facts. And it makes me even more pissed now, like, when we continue, because she would go on to do these captions for these photos that had nothing to do with the situation. She had these series of 3 photos, and she was talking about how straight men think queer women only exist to be hot and to turn them on, and that men rape lesbians thinking they can turn them straight. Like, none of this has anything to do with anything that was going on or what you were called out for. Those are both true things and entirely unrelated. But she is saying, that's that on that. And she also added, you know, I corrected myself, but everybody loves drama, so they didn't care about me correcting myself. Babe, you loved the drama. You were so eager to contribute to the drama and jump on the bandwagon that you didn't even bother checking the actual facts of the situation before you tweeted about it. So get the fuck off your high horse of like, everyone just loves drama and they don't care about the truth. You didn't care about the truth when you were finding it fun to jump on a bandwagon without having all the facts. Get fucked, honestly. Like, to this day, like, this genuinely pisses me off so much. The fucking, like, condescending just arrogance to be like, people just love drama, so they didn't care that I corrected myself after speaking out of my ass to my gigantic platform about something that was super, like, a hot topic and super relevant because I just wanted to jump in on the drama, but I'm gonna call out other people for it. Okay. She just wanted to move on, basically, and was like, that's that on that, and didn't actually really take ownership of how she contributed to homophobia and perpetuated stereotypes about gay men being predatory, or like what is predatory behavior for a gay man towards a straight man. And granted, James Charles would later prove over and over and over again to embody all of those stereotypes and all of those behaviors, in my opinion, but her apology nonetheless left a lot to be desired, in my opinion.
So I know Zara has a lot of fans, and maybe people are going to be mad about me saying this and come to her defense, and that's fine. Like, I got some Shane Dawson fans mad at me when I made my video about him a while ago, which, granted, I was very clearly burned out and very annoyed, and I was just talking about shit that, like, made me mad, and I knew it made me mad, and I tend to not want to do that too much, but, like, let me make it clear that two things can be true at the same time. Zara Larsson's incredibly talented. She has an amazing voice. And James Charles is a disgusting predator, in my opinion. And her behavior and apology was just kind of pathetic. And her explanation for it just didn't really cut it for me. I'm not a queer man. I am a queer woman, though. And I appreciated her caption talking about, you know, how queer women are treated by straight men. I don't know if she identifies as queer. I should probably look that up. But I appreciated, you know, her mentioning queer women being sexualized and assaulted by straight men, and our sexuality being seen as only to be arousing to men. And, like, I appreciated that. It had nothing to do with her contributing to a hate train towards a gay man based on unsubstantiated claims. Yeah, that still rubs me the wrong way. And maybe it wouldn't rub me as much the wrong way if she actually took a little bit more ownership and didn't want to just completely sweep it under the rug. But looking back, it looks like Tati really sat on this information, and the straw that ended up breaking the camel's back was when her brand was threatened. I feel like that's a very adequate point. And she will end up, everyone now is starting to be like, well, not everyone, but quite a few people are like, Tati ended up being right all along. And it's like, okay, but she only seemed to actually speak about it when it served her self-interest, and she ended up, spoiler alert, ended up backpedaling on it and claiming that she was manipulated and fed lies the entire time. So she really did not end up standing on business, even though the crux of what she originally said did end up being very true, in my opinion, based on what I've seen. So 8 days after My Sister was posted, we get to May 18th, 2019. James posted the response video, No More Lies, where he refuted a lot of the claims made against him. Some of the notable things that he had proof about was the fact that, or the claim that he had never supported Halo Beauty because Tati said he said it was inappropriate for his viewers to promote supplements like that. And he called that out and had video evidence that he had supported her brand and promoted it multiple times. He refuted the claim that he barely gave her any warning about the sponsorship and that he did not try to contact her afterward or apologize afterward. He showed screenshots that he had made several attempts to contact both her and her husband, but they had both just kind of shunned him, and he just took the hint and decided like they needed some time to cool off and they would eventually be able to resolve things privately. And it seemed like instead of doing that, she took it public and made that video. So he also addressed the Sam situation and reaffirmed that everything that occurred between them was consensual, which is supported by Sam's story. He also talked about Jeffree Star's claims and texts he sent him, saying that, including this text saying a bunch of people were going to expose him, including Grayson Dolan, who apparently was supporting James during this. So apparently that claim was not true. Saying that Nate's brother, Zach, I think, was gonna speak against him, and Sam was gonna speak against him when Sam said everything was consensual. So Jeffree was just speaking out of his ass, trying to scare James, saying everyone's gonna come out against you for being the predator you are. He also claimed in this video that he had never used his fame, power, or money to intimidate or manipulate anyone to behave sexually in his favor, and that he would never do that, which will allegedly be proven to be untrue in coming events. He also addressed a claim that Tati made about what he said about Sam. So this infamous birthday dinner, okay? And you did it at my birthday dinner. So Sam was the waiter at this aforementioned birthday dinner. And Tati claimed that James was making graphic comments about Sam at the table. And Tati said, James, he's straight. Which some people have called this out, but like, I don't know how you would have even known he was straight unless she was just like stereotyping based on appearance. You don't know this man. And apparently James and Sam met this day. So it's not like he would have previously known him and like told his friends about him. No one knew this dude. So she was just judging based on appearances, which I honestly don't think she was called out enough for. But yes, he was apparently like sexually harassing the waiter. Maybe not necessarily to his face, but was sexualizing the waiter to others, which could be constituted as a form of sexual harassment if you are speaking sexually explicit or in sexually explicit terms around other people without their consent, and you're making things inappropriate and you're making, you know, things uncomfortably sexual for others. You could argue that that is sexual harassment of other people if they're not okay with that kind of vibe. And doing it with someone that, or about someone that is working and in a situation where they could have easily heard you, like, that's not okay either. But James reportedly responded, "It doesn't matter, I'm a celebrity." And he later said that this was an inside joke in their friend group to basically just say that something's really good and it doesn't have anything to actually do with fame. And Tati herself was aware of this, and she like left out the context and kind of twisted it to make it sound way worse than it was. So the tide largely turned after this, and James regained a lot of subscribers. A lot of people also got really mad at Tati, who ended up not posting for over a year. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, she ended up not posting for over a year. Jeffree Star also just claimed that he shouldn't have gotten involved in the drama, and he did his classic bullshit non-apology, never doing this again. And he and Shane would then go on to make the Conspiracy collection in November of that year, which was like the biggest day of sales that Morphe had ever had, and blah, blah, blah. And it wasn't a cash grab. Okay. And the fucking like 8-part, 7-part series that initially advertised the drama but didn't end up showing the drama. And then James got all offended that people wanted to see the drama. And it was like, so, and then he acted all shocked when they watched My Sister for the first time. So on June 21st, 2020. We're jumping ahead a little bit, but I don't think anything major really happened in between. June 21st, 2020, Shane posted his infamous "Welcome to the Circus" notes app essay, where he basically credits the beauty community as a whole with the toxicity that really could only be like attributed to a handful of people, especially Jeffree Star, who he was super close to. And he kind of wrote off the beauty community as a whole as being super toxic, but he acknowledged that Jeffree himself was also very toxic, but just dismissed it as like, he's Jeffree fucking Star. What do you expect? It's like, exactly. So why do you keep associating with him? Because he makes you a lot of money. Wait, I just answered my own question. Okay, yeah. So apparently this statement was before breaking my silence. From what I could tell. Maybe this was wrong. AI cannot always be trusted. An AI bot, I literally said that because of my song Tiny Sailboat, it was saying that I have a passion for sailing in real life, including like backsheet stays and something about tackle. Like, I know nothing about sailing. Tiny Sailboat was a metaphor, but AI will tell you that I have a passion for sailing. So like, AI does not always know what the fuck it's talking about. So maybe the order of this is incorrect, but we're gonna go with that, okay? I just verified. So this was on June 21st. It was at least before June 26th, okay? So I think something had been stirring about Shane and Jeffree having known about My Sister before. And then Shane posted saying that he did know that Tati was thinking about making a video, but he had no involvement in it and he did not orchestrate it at all. He also said the infamous statement that James Charles needed a slice of humble pie the size of the fucking Empire State Building, which was true in hindsight, but maybe a poor time and place to say that. Also, side note, the whole like, ooh woo, I've always been bad at standing up for myself in this series, but Jeffree helped me stand up for myself, which I've always been bad at, is such bullshit. A bunch of people have said it, but it's such bullshit, especially if you watch the show The Chair, where Shane treats everyone around him like garbage, yells at people, demeans actors for not wanting to be involved in his disgusting brain dead script that was offensive in every way humanly possible, treats his producer like an idiot, and proves himself incapable of taking any criticism or even the most constructive of feedback, and then gaslighting everyone around him, saying he's been nothing but open the entire time. That's just a side note, though. That is a footnote in this story. But shortly after that, on June 26th, he posts his taking accountability apology video where he said that he shouldn't have said that, and he apologized to James for something, even though he had no involvement in my sister. This is a 30-page long script, and I did not clarify what exactly he apologized to James for. I watched so many videos in prep for this, but I did not want to watch Taking Accountability again. But yeah, this definitely came before Breaking My Silence. So on June 30th, we get Breaking My Silence. I remember where I was. I was at work on my lunch break. I feel like everyone was on their lunch break when they watched Breaking My Silence for the first time. So this was Tati's first video in over a year. And in this, she claims that Jeffree and Shane fed her stories about James and basically intentionally manipulated her into making this video in order to like feed this narrative they were trying to construct about him as like a revenge plot, essentially. And they were telling her that a lot of victims were going to come forward soon, and basically encouraged her to be like the catalyst for this, and they were going to do a documentary and all this stuff. And it kind of like seemed to combine with the things that she had witnessed, because she did mention in By Sister, the things I've heard about you, the things I've been hearing about you. So it seemed like she was being fed some things and stories about him. But when she posted the video and James responded, Shane and Jeffree fell silent, which kind of tracks with how much Jeffree especially supported Tati at first and then retracted and fell off on the whole subject, publicly at least, because multiple other people will corroborate what Tati says in this video, which is that Jeffree was parading around a voice note that was allegedly sent to him by a victim of James Charles, an alleged victim. Blair White, who I used to be a huge fan of, and there's still videos on the internet of me saying how much I love her, I am no longer a fan of, says that she was sent this voice memo at one point by Jeffree Star because she had been calling him out for saying, calling out James, but not actually posting the receipts, but claiming he had them. And he DM'd her after seeing a tweet where she just used his name. She didn't even tag him. So he really was trolling his mentions, looking for any mention of him at all, and following up with everyone. This man was supposedly employed, but was not acting like it. I personally believe her. But so Tati claimed that she was sent this voice memo as well, leading up to By Sister. So she also did backtrack a lot, saying that she never called him a predator, even though, yes, technically that is true. You never use that word, but she heavily implied it, because the behavior she described, I feel like it'd be fair for just about anyone to call that predatory behavior. Using your, power, fame, influence, money to get people to behave sexually in your favor, especially because this was only a year and a half, not even 2 years after the peak of Me Too, after Me Too really broke and spread worldwide. So I feel like the idea of predatory behavior was especially relevant and newly fresh in the cultural dialogue. So it was like a dog whistle. You knew what you were doing, babe. So Tati also said that Shane, she was he not only knew I was making a video, she also said he offered to help edit it, title it, and create the thumbnail for it. She said that she declined those offers though, but she described getting close to him and talking to him about being sexually assaulted, to which he responded that he was an empath. That was another meme at the time. And this will be especially ironic considering what happens later. But she described an interaction the night before she posted By Sister. And she said that she was talking to Shane about being concerned for James's mental health, basically, because he was in Australia in a really tall hotel building, and he was in a high rise, and she was concerned that he would harm himself. And then Shane basically said that he was too narcissistic to ever do that. And that did look really bad for Shane. My question is, though, because that is fucked up. My question is, this was the night before you posted the video. The night before she posted the video, and she is expressing concern to someone else for James's mental health. And according to James, she still had not even responded to his attempts to contact her and apologize about the sugar bear hair thing. So you were admitting that you were concerned for his mental health and how it would be affected by you posting this video, which you would then later on claim you didn't mean for this video to like create a hate train and you didn't want the hate to get too intense or anything like that. But you are, in my opinion, are subconsciously at least expressing an awareness of this. You're expressing an awareness that this could get to a really bad level and this could exacerbate his mental health and make things really bad for him to where he would consider hurting himself. And you still did it. You still posted it rather than text him back and maybe have like one private conversation about this before taking it to the internet in the name of closing the chapter. Like, I call bullshit on that. That is fucked up to me. That's so fucked up, especially for like a mentor, someone that was a mentor and you credit yourself with like taking him under your wing and being like a mother figure type and a guide to him, to completely turn on him to that extent to where you are literally admitting you were aware that this could affect his mental state to that point and you still posted it. And you're kind of trying to make it seem like Shane's the only villain in that situation, where you apologize for having posted the video, but she gives the infamous line of like, I'm sorry I let myself be manipulated, which in my opinion kind of shirks a lot of responsibility and ownership of what you did. Okay. So this led to the infamous Instagram live crash out that Shane did that we pretty much all witnessed. I did not witness this live, unfortunately, but he just ranted the entire time. I think he may have like had 2 complete sentences in this 3-minute. It was like a 3-minute long live. He may have gotten like 2 complete sentences out, but the entire thing was just, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, she's a fucking whatever. Oh, and one of the complete sentences was, because you message drama channels. So she mentions being a victim of abuse herself in the context of she's saying she was sent this voice memo by Jeffree and she was explaining why she didn't immediately report it. And she was saying, you know, as a victim of abuse myself, I understand it can be hard to come forward. And so I didn't want to make that decision for someone else necessarily, which honestly I do get that. But she goes, as a victim of abuse myself. And then Shane, who according to Tati had listened to her talk about said sexual abuse and empathized with her about it and said he was an empath and like consoled her and supported her. He hears that and he scoffs, rolls his eyes, and just says, you are so manipulative, and just accuses her of only saying that for the purpose of being manipulative, which in my opinion is bullshit, because I personally think the way in which she brought that up was relevant to explaining why she didn't immediately report that voice memo to authorities. But Shane is yelling at the screen that she's fake crying, like pointing at the screen. You are not real. Like, that's not real. And was like, oh my God. Like the ooh woo soft boy mask is coming off once again. And he's showing his propensity for anger, even though he likes to say that he never gets angry. But like, that's such a lie. Like he loves anger. He loves anger. He also tried to one-up her at one point, I think. It was the purpose of it, and he was trying to say like, I was molested, and trying to use that to like discredit the fact that she brought that up or something. I don't even know, but Rylan was famously telling him to get off live, and then, you know, there's infamous Tati was saying, I didn't even know I was making a video, so how did all these news outlets and drama channels know that something was coming? And then Shane gives the famous line of, because you message drama channels. That's a point of contention. I don't actually know the facts about that. Maybe she did message drama channels. Or maybe it was other people. If I end up looking it up and find out a definitive answer or a semi-definitive answer, I will put it on the screen here at this point. So, we get doing... Oh, God. Right around my birthday, I think. Like, right after my birthday, which is... not on his channel anymore. Shocker. It's the gold couch video, okay? So he is apologizing to James, saying he got caught up in drama and shit. I could not bring myself to watch this video again, which like I probably should have for the sake of research, but also the fact that he jumped on the hate train with James and calling him a predator and everything was so ironic, considering he also talked about being the secret, being an experiment, being like hooking up with straight guys and also has had multiple sexual assault allegations against him as well. So shortly after this whole debacle, sometime in 2020, I believe, James went on the Impulsive podcast where he very famously said he is not attracted to older guys, which sucks. He said, I would date the absolute youngest, like 18, 19, that looks a little older, or like 24 that has a younger personality. Which, just personally considering what we find out about his interactions with people going forward, the 18 and 19 that looks a little older is bullshit in my opinion, because he likes dudes that look very young. He likes dudes that make you seriously question if they are legal. It's like barely legal, but a step beyond that because it turns out they're not legal. But he'll say that it was inadvertent and he contacted these people unknowingly, but like, it seems, in my opinion, like he has a preference for people that do not look legal. And he described being frustrated at talking to someone who was not willing to fly to LA to hang out with him, even though he said he would pay for the flight. And this brings us back to the Gage situation, where he quickly and publicly accused someone of using him and being a con artist in order to get free things out of him, when apparently all they had done was realize that they were not attracted to him. So it suggests to me that he has a pattern of using his money and access and power as a form of leverage over someone. You have no problem paying for someone's flight, and then if they don't take it, then they're not taking the relationship seriously. But if they take the flight, then that's something that you can use against them of like, I paid for your flight and you're not even doing XYZ. When, especially if they're in high school and college, a senior in high school or in college, they might feel a little especially vulnerable going to a different state and staying at someone else's house, especially someone older than them and more powerful than them, and someone that paid for their flight, and someone that may or may not feel a certain sense of entitlement for certain things to happen because they paid for said flight. So yeah, that was the famous Freudian slip of, you can't afford a ticket, you're either in high school or college, a senior in high school or in college, which I get that a lot of seniors in high school are 18. I personally was 17 when I graduated high school. But regardless, as a 21-year-old, what the fuck are you doing talking to a high schooler? Regardless of their age, regardless of their grade. What the fuck are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? And also, I'm sure he wanted it to be implied, but senior in high school does not necessarily mean legal. Like I said, a lot of seniors are 18. That is not the like blanket of security that you think it is. But even if they are 18, what the fuck are you doing talking to a high schooler? Like, you have no reason to talk to a high schooler as a 21-year-old adult. Oh my God. So yeah, even if someone's an 18-year-old senior, they've probably been a legal adult for about 5 minutes. So yeah, we just go back to what the fuck were you doing? So at this point, a lot of people were still turned off by James, but a lot of other people saw the situation as these older, more experienced creators having tried to take down this 19-year-old by overblowing some mistakes that he made and basically purposely misunderstanding him and presenting the situation out of context in order to fuel public backlash. And quite a few people bought that narrative. Then we're brought to the 2021 allegations, okay? So, I think around March 2021, quite a few young boys, many around 16 years old, teenagers, talked about being approached by James Charles and having inappropriate, flirtatious, suggestive conversations initiated by him. And quite a few included screenshots where he sent not safe for work photos and asked them for the same, including, I remember a lot of these including requests for photos of their body hair. Not to kink shame, but yes, to kink shame in this certain situation. To James shame, absolutely. So the two main people that posted about this were named Isaiah and Alex, and they were apparently both 16 at the time. So it also included someone who, shockingly, was a legal adult who claimed that James essentially demanded explicit photos from him in exchange for money, which, like porn and also OnlyFans absolutely existed at that point. So if getting personalized explicit photos was your thing, there was an abundance of verifiably legal adults doing that for a living that would have been eager and willing to satisfy your needs. But he allegedly was only seeking out people on social media, and he seemed privy to those who would be impressed by his large presence. He also later on, when we move on in the story, he will say that he had an OF account, and he apparently still has an OF account that he buys content on. So it's like, just fucking go on there and buy content from people that are already doing that. What is it with you seeking out people from social media? And you apparently want to find love, but you really seem to be primarily interested in sexting. So some of the screenshots that were leaked included him saying things like, it would literally only take 30 seconds to send a pic like that, and just send a pic, dumbass, aka pressuring someone to send pictures that some could assume were of a suggestive nature. But one of them was a selfie. Maybe he was saying he wanted them to take a selfie. But either way, he was just pressuring people to do things that they apparently just didn't want to do, which is pretty universally frowned upon. It's not recommended. So saying someone gave big dick energy, telling them to pick him up for some roadhead, asking if they shave their body hair, asking if they think he has a nice body, and saying he's just lying here horny. Yes, so right around this time, April 2021-ish, is when Ethan Rhett, you know what? He was 15 at the time he came forward. Okay, 15 years old at the time, came forward about interactions he had with James the previous year when he was 14 years old. James was largely condemned by many people. You expectedly got his brain dead stands challenging everyone, saying, you have no proof, where are the receipts? Even though the majority of these situations involved James approaching people either on like Instagram or TikTok or something, and then eventually moving to Snapchat. He would always ask for them to add him on Snapchat, and that would be where they primarily spoke going forward. And then on Snapchat, where these conversations and photo exchanges primarily took place, it is kind of notable that the photos and messages would delete or disappear after a certain amount of time unless you either turned off the vanish mode or you took a screenshot. In both cases, the person would be notified that you did so. They would be notified you turned off vanish mode. They would be notified you took a screenshot. So it's kind of like in Angelica Oles a few weeks ago when she was talking about, we're starting going back to Ethan already, when she's talking about the Ethan situation, she brings up the original video he made in 2021, and this person that re-uploaded it just clearly did not believe him, is probably a James stan, maybe they're not, who knows, but they just added all this commentary on screen of like, no receipts, no proof, you have no receipts, you have no proof, just, in my opinion, intentionally missing the point that James would orchestrate these situations to make the person the least likely to document evidence of it. The least likely to want to rock the boat, make waves, especially because they tend to be way younger than him. They tend to have way smaller followings than him. It's not hard to do so. And it seemed like they were interested in making content, and he may have sensed that they probably wanted to be in his favor and get on his good side, and seemed to, in my opinion, create the situations where they would be least likely to get evidence of what he was doing. And if they did, you know, he would be in the situation where he'd be the most likely to find out about it. And he was apparently, allegedly, like threatening to ruin these people and just giving very bad, alarming vibes to where they wouldn't want to upset him because they would be afraid about what he would do. So to just say like, oh, where's the proof? Where's the receipts? I feel like it's just very simplistic and reductive. And I feel like you are intentionally missing the point. So to be fair, there were some people kind of jumping on the bandwagon with unsubstantiated claims that then got elevated by channels like Def Noodles. I just keep putting my glasses on, taking them off. So Def Noodles apparently didn't validate everything thoroughly, and he created like this Twitter thread that eventually became like the 20 victims of James Charles. And this had the unfortunate effect of making other stories seem less legitimate by default. However, according to several of these stories, James would initiate these conversations on Snapchat that would allegedly gradually get more inappropriate and uncomfortable, and would ultimately escalate to harassment and threats if these teenagers did not behave the way he wanted. So I feel like it doesn't take that many brain cells in my script, I was like, I feel like it doesn't take that many brain cells to deduce that if someone is in that situation where they are, let's just say hypothetically, they're being threatened with public humiliation, outing, etc. They're going to ruin their career. They're going to, launch a hate campaign against them. They're going to whatever. Intimidation, if they do something the person doesn't like, that might create some hesitation to screenshot the interactions on the platform that was picked specifically by the person with the most power, which just so happens to notify them if they take any screenshots. It seems pretty intuitive, but what do I know? So these people speaking also included someone who alleged that James added him on Snapchat and James sent him lewd photos and requested them back. He claimed he said no and told him he was 16, which was also apparently available in his TikTok bio at the time. But James allegedly tried to pursue things anyway. And according to Def Noodles at the time, the teenager was pursuing things with law enforcement, but it does not seem like that ended up going anywhere. Considering what happens with Ethan Red, I think I have a theory about why that didn't end up going anywhere, but I don't know for sure. James posted a Notes app statement with a trigger warning for grooming and pedophilia, which shows a bit of an understanding of how to administer trigger warnings that he will not continue to show going forward. But he claimed that the video going around was false. He says he came across someone on Instagram, saw that they followed him, and added them on Snapchat. Saw that they followed him. So saw that this person was a follower, a fan, aware of his following, saw that they followed him, and that was a green light of, yeah, I should pursue something with them. I feel like that statement, even in a vacuum, is so alarming. Circling back to the fact that he got bored on Raya, I sincerely think, in my opinion, I'm speculating that this suggests a pattern of him preferring to interact with people who are more likely to be impressed and influenced by his position, by his large following, his money, his power, etc. So he claimed the person DM'd him after he added this person on Snapchat. He claimed the person DM'd him saying they loved him and sent lewd photos first. Which, even in this version of things, I feel like a normal person would have been put off by talking suggestively with someone who is a huge fan of them and taking advantage of that power imbalance. He's going to plead ignorance of the power imbalance because he didn't try to use his power over anyone. But, like, bitch, the power imbalance was, like, in your face, shaking its ass at you. It was basically giving you a lap dance, and you're saying you couldn't recognize it, but okay. But no, it's fine, because James claimed he asked the person how old he was right away, and the person claimed they were 18, so James started flirting back. He plays the hopeless romantic card again and says he was just so caught up in the excitement of meeting someone who could possibly be great, which obviously has nothing to do with the fact that they were already a fan of his. He says because of that, and because of this excitement, and he was just in the rush of possibly finding the love of his life, he did not ask for proof of his age. He then says, based on what he uploaded, it was clear he was taking photos with another device and had ulterior motives from the beginning. It is a very damned if you do, damned if you don't situation with this dude. Because saying it's clear he had ulterior motives is crazy work, in my opinion. So yeah, this speaks to the catch-22 nature of the situations that James seems to consistently put people in, allegedly. Also, what these people then have to deal with if they ever decide to come forward, because if you don't decide to circumvent the situation he puts you in by having this conversation on Snapchat, and you want to please him, even if you're not a huge fan of his, even if you're not intentionally trying to get something out of him or use him or whatever, like, you want to please him because of that inherent power imbalance. You don't want to upset him, especially if he's already started to be weird with you, but, like, you just naturally want to please him. So you go along with being on Snapchat, but then things start to feel a little bit weird, and you're kind of afraid about what might happen if you explicitly say something, or if you take a screenshot to where he can see you did, or if you turn off vanish mode and you get the question of, why'd you turn off vanish mode? What do you think I'm trying to do? And you don't want to deal with that, so you try to circumvent it by taking a photo of what's happening with another device, just so you have a little bit of a safety net in case things get a little bit weird. So if you do that, then apparently you have ulterior motives, and you're clearly just trying to start shit from the beginning and you're just trying to get him in trouble. But if you don't have that, and you don't try to circumvent that situation, then you're lying because you don't have proof. Yeah, his fans can more easily write it off as you're lying for attention, even though who would want the kind of attention his fans give on his accusers? That is a question I have not found an answer to. Interesting how we can always find a way to arrive back at the less powerful person in the situation having ulterior motives against James. He doesn't say it in those words, but I feel like that's implied. Correct me if I'm wrong. James claims he began to question the person's age, and when he asked them to confirm it again, they admitted they were 16. He said he was uncomfortable with continuing the conversation, but the guy said they could keep talking and it could be their little secret. Fat Sajak pointed this out, but I feel like that's an uncharacteristic thing to say as the person with less power in that situation. But I feel that's kind of neither here nor there, but James said he unfriended him after that, and they have not talked since. He also says he is not victim blaming him or victimizing himself in any way, even though he just said this kid obviously had ulterior motives from the beginning and said he was just so caught up in the possibility of finding the love of his life that he didn't protect himself from the red flags. But he's simply sharing what happened, and what happened was not okay, which I think many of us can agree on, but probably not for the reasons James said it. So he goes, he says, after false allegations like this in the past, I think referring to Bai's sister, I would never knowingly engage with anyone underage and put my life on the line for a few Snapchats. And I think the wording of that statement is very telling. It's not that he wouldn't do it because it's disgusting and immoral and he wants nothing to do with that. It's because it would make him look bad, and it would ruin his career and his life and his image. And he's not a fucking idiot. And because of situations like this, he will now ask to see the ID of every guy he talks to. Still not addressing the fundamental issue that he could go on actual dating apps and maybe should figure out a different way of connecting with people besides social media, particularly with people that follow him. Then we get another teenage boy, I believe, named Jake, who also like, I'm not entirely sure of like what story is attached to which dude, so they might not add up to like, this is several people, but I'm not exactly sure like which is Isaiah's story, which is Alex's story, who exactly the dude we just talked about is. I should have probably clarified that, but it is a handful of people. And then we get another teenage boy, I believe, named Jake, who also claimed to communicate with James on Snapchat. This included James wishing him a happy birthday. This child also posted about being 15 years old, by the way, just so we know. Just so we're clear. Jake then shares the snaps that James sent him on his private story. I assume private Snapchat stories, but in a screenshot that he shows, James is then seen messaging him saying, "What the fuck are you doing posting my snaps on your private story? I strongly recommend keeping my name out of your mouth or we're going to have a major problem." You know, like people do when they're threatening and intimidating people. Allegedly. The said snaps included James calling him a cutie. The one that I saw at least. And the pics of the snaps were also taken with another camera, likely to avoid having to screenshot them. So not to victim blame at all. This is not victim blaming. This is literally just a question, like a curiosity of mine. It seems like this person didn't want James to know that they were documenting the messages. And so I am curious why they posted them on their private story where James seemed to have access. Like maybe they didn't know that James had access to it, or maybe someone else that had access to it alerted James to them. I don't know, but that part of the story I'm curious about. It doesn't discredit it in any way, but that is something that it's just a question I have. So James then said to the boy, "You called me cute first, and you said you were bi and into me, as if that changes anything at all." As if that changes. I read that as if James said it. So he said, "You called me cute first, and you said you were bi and into me." As if that changes anything. It doesn't. Also, this just reminds me real quick of One Direction. Kings forever. I've mentioned before, I will always be a Directioner at heart. I was a die-hard fan at like 13, 14 years old. 14 was probably like the peak of it for me. But they very notably, like obviously they were like heartthrobs. They were like the biggest teen heartthrobs in the world at one point. And they talked at one point about being in Sweden specifically. And at a point where I think like pretty much all of them were over 18. And they were in Sweden specifically, and a bunch of their fans, many of whom were underage, like teenage children. But maybe there's some young adults in there too, who knows. These girls took their tops off and like pressed their boobs against the car window that they were in. As far as we know, like they never took advantage of that. As far as we know, not a single one of them. We never heard a story about them taking advantage of a fan when they literally had underage girls throwing themselves at them, like shoving their bare breasts in their face, like fawning over them constantly, like begging them for just like sending them the dirtiest messages, everything. The thirst was so fucking real. If you know, you know. And they were dealing with that constantly. And as far as we know, none of the 5 of them ever took advantage of that. As far as we know, with a fan, period, let alone an underage fan. So just using them as the pinnacle of excellence that they are. And honestly, like even like Justin Bieber, like we never really heard. I mean, I know people have a whole complex about Hailey and how she was a fan of his for a long time, but like we never like saw really Justin like taking, plucking someone that had no standing, no following, and wanted that kind of life and was just a pure fan of his from nowhere and use them. Like we haven't seen that with other like super successful people, including like the teen heartthrob types. Yeah, and I know he's gonna credit it with being desperate, as we will get to, but it's just really not an excuse. One Direction were literally teenagers when they got famous. They were literally teenagers from like super humble beginnings, and they like almost all of them became legal in the spotlight, and they were navigating fame. I'm going completely off script right now. They were navigating fame and being seen as like some of the sexiest men in the world at like 18 years old, and trying to figure out what real love was and all this stuff. And they're still human, and they just magically never ended up getting into a scandal sexting minors, at least that we could publicly see anyway. And I'm pretty sure it would have gone pretty public if we did. So yeah, but he tries to say like, you called me cute first. Or I feel like a similar thing was when he was like, this dude said he loved me and then sent me lewd photos. And it's like, okay, celebrities deal with that all the time. They don't all respond. They don't all flirt back. They don't all send photos back, let alone before verifying the person's age. So yeah, and also, friend, if you were so convinced you were doing nothing wrong and you were just falling in love like Molly Ringwald in the intro sequence of Secret Life of the American Teenager, I just think of that song. You're falling in love with someone that could be the one. Why are you so defensive and hostile at the idea of other people learning about it? Especially on someone's private story, like their close friends list, like a handful of other people in this person's life. If you think that this person's becoming special to you and you're so convinced that what you're sending them is completely innocuous and there's nothing wrong with it because they're of age and there's just no reason to be ashamed of what you're doing, why are you so defensive at the idea of anyone else knowing about it? Just asking questions. So further screenshots show James calling this child a liar and an idiot, saying he's backpedaling because he got caught, which is a hilariously ironic statement for James Charles to make. He says to never speak about him again, and actually says, I added you and minded my own business, as if those two things are the same in any way. That is a giant oxymoron. But the child called him cute after James added him, so obviously the child is to blame for the entire situation here. Obviously they orchestrated everything. So James also ironically says, using your age to bait someone is against the law, by the way. Which, like, I've read that so many times and it still makes me laugh when I read it. And this is funny considering I didn't know their age or even they lied about their age, as far as I know, those are not legal defenses for inappropriate contact or communication with minors. James also claimed that he saved the messages where the person apparently admitted to lying about their age, which is a thorough line in all of James's stories, is always that they lie about their age, and ultimately pretty much always that they admit to lying about their age. And he apparently saved the messages where this person did, but the child must have deleted them because he suddenly can't find them, which I believe this child says that his real age was always available. And I found one situation, like the person talked about in the Cosmo article that we'll get into, where he did admit to lying about his age at one point, but in proportion to the number of people James said lied about their age, the number of those that have actually admitted to it and say that that's what happened is very small. It seemed like a lot of these people's ages were publicly available from the beginning, from what I could tell, and from what I was hearing at the time that this was happening. I was finding out about a lot of this primarily through the Frenemies podcast. And again, if you think you had such evidence and you're in the more powerful position and you have less to lose by screenshotting these interactions, you'd think that you would have just screenshotted them. We're all quick to demand receipts from the person in the less powerful position in the situation, but when we have the chance to show them, we have every excuse for why we don't actually have them. That's interesting. And you seem pretty well versed on how Snapchat works, so you would have thought that you would take that extra step in security and covering your ass and screenshotting them rather than just saving them. I'm not the most well-versed person on how Snapchat works, so I probably wouldn't have known the difference between that, but you'd think someone who seems to fucking live on Snapchat would know to take that extra step. But now we arrive at James's legendary abomination of a confession response video titled "Holding Myself Accountable," released April 1st, 2021. And this was stylized in all lowercase, of course. So I often title my videos in all lowercase, but I don't know if I would make that choice for a video that serious, like responding to allegations of grooming. But again, what do I know? I am looking at myself on the screen, okay? I just, it's so big, it's hard not to look at it. My face is giant compared to the little camera. My voice is getting tired. I'm gonna have to like cut myself off at a certain point for tonight, because we're still not even halfway through this godforsaken script. I think this is literally gonna be a 4-hour long video. That's my official prediction. I'm putting it in here. Okay, so this video included James, who normally talked extremely loudly and quickly and was very known for that. It included him talking very slowly and very quietly in his like ASMR voice. And many people speculated at the time that he intentionally lowered the volume of this video like in post-production, because I remember everyone saying that they had to like blast their speakers to be able to hear this at all, or like so many people had to put headphones on in order to even understand what he was saying because it was so oddly quiet. And I don't think I'm alone. I feel like it was a common experience to like have all your speakers and everything on the highest setting and then forget to lower them before you then watched another video, and then you just jump scare the shit out of yourself. So in this video, he said he understood his actions and how they were wrong, but he offered an ambiguous trigger warning and just said we would be talking about sensitive topics without actually saying what those topics were, even though in his previous statement, he actually did a good job saying trigger warning for grooming and pedophilia, but then he just says we're talking about sensitive topics. So a little bit of a opposite of a progression. A digression? I don't know. Is that what digress means? I have no idea. So he claimed he added these people on Snapchat, immediately asked how old they were, was told that they were 18, believed them, engaged in flirty conversation, later found out they were 16. Also, apparently both of them had their ages in their TikTok bios at the time. And in order to hit the message button on TikTok, I think it's fair to assume that one's eyes would naturally glaze over the bio No? But apparently he doesn't have these screenshots of where they apparently admit that they lied about their age. And it seems like even if he did have them, he's not going to include them. But he says he doesn't have them. But he is saying that he fucked up, and he knows that he fucked up, even though, you know, he was lied to and misled. But he should have taken the extra safeguards. He said the conversations should have never happened, and it was totally his fault, even though he trusted the lies he was told, and should have gotten the correct info himself by actually reading the publicly available information available in these people's bios. I just said available a lot, but whatever. But he's not making excuses, guys. Okay? Remember that. And even if they did not make their ages public, it was super obvious to anyone with eyes, especially a legal adult, that these boys were not of legal age. In my opinion, and in a lot of other people's opinion, it was very, very obvious that these boys were teenagers. And not legal teenagers either. They look like high schoolers. And not even seniors in high school. But he didn't do the research, which is so embarrassing. That's what's so embarrassing. So to the guys involved, he apologizes for adding them, flirting with them, and apologizes if he made them uncomfortable. I'm trying to work on not doing as insane air quotes. I do like James Charles air quotes, and that is something I need to work on. He says he was being reckless and wonders why he was allowing himself to be so reckless. And he's so rich and successful and incredible at every other aspect of his life, so it was really confusing to him how he was just always so thirsty and hopeless and struggling in love to the point of needing to seek out connections through the minors in his own fan base. And he came to the grand conclusion that he is desperate. Which is like, yeah, fork found in kitchen. Like, we know. Like, babe, we've been new. You have been so obviously desperate and hyper-fixated on having a relationship for years to the point that it has been off-putting to your own audience and people that have collaborated with you for years. It has been a talking point for years in your own videos of how hyper-fixated and tunnel-visioned and like hyper-focused you are in the idea of having a boyfriend to the point of seeming like straight up obsessive about it. But he says what he's always wanted is to be in a relationship with someone his age or older, which is a fucking lie. Considering he's on the record saying he would ideally date the absolute youngest he can that maybe looks a little older, which I also personally call bullshit on. But he literally said he would prefer to date the absolute youngest he can, 18, 19, which he said as having just turned 21 at the time, I believe. Or someone slightly older with a young personality, which he seemed open to as a last resort, but that's just my personal take. And in that same interview, he admitted to talking to high schoolers, which he corrected to seniors in high school as if it makes it that much better. But, okay, you want to be with someone your own age. Sure. Even though you were 21 talking to seniors in high school. Whether they're 18 or not, that is not your own age, babe. Let alone older. But okay, sure, you want to be with someone your age or older. We love rewriting. We love revision. And he was just so desperate for love that he trusted too quickly and he missed out on red flags, like actually reading the bios of people before immediately leaping into their DMs. Like, I can just not state that enough. Honestly, this whole, like, this is my fault, but I was lied to and I was too trusting. It's very much giving Tati. It is giving, I'm sorry, I let myself be manipulated. And also his use of language is interesting, like with relationship and love and flirting, when a better word, in my opinion, besides flirting, would be propositioning. And rather than flirty, it would be suggestive. That, I think those are better descriptors of the tone of the messages that I saw. You talk about wanting love and affection, but the conversations we saw, at least, are focused on your sexual attraction and arousal by these boys. And I think that's an interesting hint at the lens through which he views love and relationships. He also still stands behind the statement that, and the claim that he would never want to use his fame, money, or power to get what he wants. In fact, he still stands by that 1,000%. But he says initially he saw himself as the victim, saying they lied to him and they flirted first and they DM'd first. So they didn't use their money power. He didn't use his money, power, or fame for anything. Which, even if that's true, it doesn't fucking matter. But it doesn't seem true considering pretty much every story involves him initially following someone and reaching out to them first in the DMs and then suggesting that they switch to Snapchat. Not even like suggest, I guess, just either adding them on Snapchat or just initiating the switch to Snapchat. But he realizes now that power imbalances can exist even if the more powerful person isn't aware of it. So it's still his fault. And he wanted to have a Hannah Montana type experience where he could just talk to someone and be himself, which is interesting considering his history of reaching out to people who already follow him and are already aware of him. But he says he's so glad he finally gets it now. He's just like, so glad all that's over. And he mentions doing research again, but he totally gets it now and he's going to change how he goes about talking to people in the future. He then famously says, "To the victims, I am so, so sorry. And I promise that something like this will never ever happen again." He also apologizes to his friends, family, team members, and fans. But as Fat Sajak points out, not the parents of the children he allegedly harassed. So that was interesting. Interesting omission. He says he's going to take time off to educate himself on these topics, which, like, what do you need to be educated on? That was a very widely asked question. What do you need to be educated on besides it's not okay to talk to minors and maybe verify whether or not they are minors first and maybe stop using your social media and your fan base as a dating pool? What else needs to be researched and what do you need to be educated on beyond that? And yeah, it has been said that like this could have maybe been a decent apology if this was the first time that this had happened, but he had been accused of this multiple times at this point. And I remember after I had first watched this video and I had debriefed my parents about it, I remember my dad asking, "So he's going to prison?" Like, so he's going to prison? You know, like a normal, non-chronically online, sane person who knows how the world typically works would probably assume was going to happen after hearing about this abomination of a story. But unfortunately, dear father, no, he would not be going to prison. Morphe later dropped him in a super weird way, and they both claimed it was like a mutual decision, and James actually claimed later that he initiated it. Later on, a former employee of James sued him for wrongful termination and mistreatment, like lost wages and shit like that, or unpaid wages, which he claimed was untrue. And he said it wasn't an option to settle out of court. And as far as I could find, no settlement or resolution was ever reached, at least one that was publicly announced. Oh, also as a little sister side note, he was one of the most prominent influencers to be called out for consistently partying and going out during the pandemic. Then on July, that was a little ways back, but all throughout, pandemic, everything, he was one of those people that was consistently going out and violating quarantine orders. I forgot the word for it. Oh God, a beautiful time we live in, the post-COVID world we live in, where I forgot what that term was. Then on July 2nd, 2021, James posted an honest conversation. Or was it an honest conversation or an open conversation? I thought I remembered it being open. Let me see. Yes, it was open. I don't know why I put honest in my script. So he posted an open conversation, which is still up on his channel, by the way. So he starts off by saying it's so weird to be back with this icky tone of just, wow, I've missed doing this so much. As if he was like in the hospital or something. Like, as if he had like a near-death experience. So he says it was so good to be away and work on himself, and he's going to talk about growth and self-reflection. He also says he doesn't want to move on, but he wants to move forward, as if there is a significant difference between those two phrases. He also makes this video a get ready with me because people said his last video felt scripted and ingenuine, which sucked because it wasn't scripted. He said, we can all agree that the last video was a miss, which sucks because it was super important. At this point, by the way, holding myself accountable had been set to private, assumedly for legal reasons. He says it was super embarrassing to talk about, I think, in order to try to humanize himself and make himself seem more vulnerable, like manipulators do. And he makes another very manipulative choice of words, in my opinion, saying, I wanted to hold myself accountable for the role that I did play, with a stress on the did. Which to me, and I think a lot of other people, insinuated a type of like, it took two to tango type of vibe in these situations. You know, there was a part that I played and there was a part that they played. You know, the part that I did play as opposed to the part that I didn't. That's what I interpreted from the placement of that stressed syllable. And I think that is victim blaming. I absolutely think that is victim blaming. And shirking responsibility. I love the word shirking. So he said the tone and delivery overshadowed the message of the video when, as Fat Sajak said, I think the message was the main thing that people had a problem with. I don't think it was the fact that the message was overshadowed. I think it's the fact that the message was what it was. So he recounted saying 2 guys had come forward about having inappropriate interactions with him when they were underage. His first reaction was to be upset because they lied about their age and he absolutely did not groom them. But he sat down and realized that as the adults and the person with power in the situation, he had the responsibility to check that it was appropriate, and he didn't do that, which sucks. He's going to use that word a lot, by the way. He says he's not trying to treat it like another scandal and wait for it to blow over, and he has not been taking it lightly. He also contradicts himself in a Freudian slip, saying something like, if I thought I could ignore this, I wouldn't have posted my last video, and I wouldn't be posting on social media like nothing ever happened. And again, Fat Sajak says this. I quote her a lot. I did a lot of research, like, exclusively on her channel when I was finishing this script because I needed to refresh my memory about the sequence of events during this time period, and I just watched, like, her commentary on all of this, so there are going to be quite a few Fat Sajak references. She is, like, my favorite source of information. I forget at what video I reference, like, do we know them over and over again, but now I feel like these days it's, like, almost always Fat Sajak that I just reference all the time, but he probably meant to say I would be posting on social media like it never happened, but he slipped in a delicious fashion. Another word he's going to say a lot during this video is embarrassing. Things sucked and things were embarrassing. Again, I think trying to, like, minimize the situation and humanize himself. But he says this was the worst but most important wake-up call ever. And this was the most embarrassing thing to ever happen to him. The number of times he says the word embarrassing in both videos is excessive and seems very calculated. He said the word embarrassing quite a lot in Holding Myself Accountable as well. He says in 2019, he made promises to his audience that he would change his behavior, and he claims that he did, which, if this was the improved version of your behavior, that is beyond concerning. But he acknowledges that it looks like he didn't make any changes, which sucks because it makes him look bad, and it has disappointed people. He's also aware that this will follow him down the line, and that sucks so much it's not even funny, because remember, guys, he's not the victim here. He continues to make word choices that I might be nitpicking, but I personally feel like they're very calculated. Like when he says, I want to take accountability for what I did do. Because to me, I feel like that implies a similar thing as, like, the part that I did play. Is like, I want to take accountability for what I did do as opposed to what I didn't do. As opposed to what people are lying about. As opposed to the part that they played. That kind of thing. That's what I get from that. And I feel like that's supported by the fact that he immediately says we should be able to defend ourselves against what we didn't do. So he says a lot of people ran wild with stories that made things worse to take advantage of him being off of social media. And these are things that he apparently saw on social media while he was gone, which is another beautiful contradiction. He mentions one channel in particular, not by name, but it turned out to be Def Noodles, who I did not watch at the time, just for context. He eventually compiled a list of 20 people claiming to be victims of James Charles, but he needs to say something about this because he's not comfortable with anyone thinking there are any victims of James Charles, let alone 20, even though in the video, in Holding Myself Accountable, that which he said was super important, he apologizes in his own words to the victims. But now apparently there are no victims. He said anything was being added to this list, like people he'd have a 5-minute conversation with and then find out their age and not respond to. There were apparently guys that he matched with on Tinder that were lying about their age, saying they were 18, 19, continuing to support this pattern for seeking out barely legal people and those who look barely legal. I also don't know how easy it is to lie about your age on Tinder. I tried to get on Tinder when I was 17 one time and it didn't let me because it automatically linked to my Facebook and I could tell that I was underage. But maybe if you have a different phone setup, you could do it. I'm not sure. But He also says a lot of these conversations were completely fabricated, but the headlines based on this false narrative continue to spread because we live in a headline-driven society. He acknowledges that from the outside, he would think the same thing as everyone else. He would think he's the common denominator and something's clearly wrong, but he was just so desperate for attention that he would engage with anyone willing to talk to him for 5 minutes. And he was delusional in thinking that that could lead to him finding the one, but it could... because it could lead instead... Wait, okay, hold on. What did I write? He was delusional in thinking that could lead to him finding the one, but it could lead to him meeting people that would lie or take advantage of him. I worded that really weird. I guess I could say and instead of but. Yeah. He was delusional... Third time's the charm. He was delusional in thinking that could lead to him finding the one, as it could also lead to him meeting people that would lie or take advantage of him, which is no one else's fault but his own, by the way, in case we forgot. He says there's another pattern that anyone making a video about their experience with him will go viral on social media. And he's not saying that to brag, you know, or remind us of how rich and famous and successful he is, but to just state the reality, but to sister state the reality of the situation. Can you tell it's like 12:30 in the morning? But it's a meme to post about your experience with him. What time is it right now, honestly? It's 11:30. Okay. It's like almost midnight right now. Can you tell? It's a meme to post about your experience with him. And he gets that it's his own fault, but he also deserves privacy. And it's one thing to have an innocent, I am malfunctioning. I probably should go to bed soon. It's... hold on. I'm still sober, by the way. Just like... Oh, hold on. I need a break. Oh, I don't know why that's so funny to me. Okay. It's one thing to have an innocent conversation and then see it resurface on TikTok an hour later. But he continues to say it's his own fault, and it comes with the territory. Did he even finish? He's like, it's one thing, but then I don't even think he followed it up with it's another thing. I think he just said it's one thing. And now I'm thinking of One Direction again. But he continues to say it's his own fault, and it comes with the territory, but he has the vibe of making it out like all these things are happening to him. He's not trying to victim blame or victimize himself again, in case we forgot. And he says... a very interesting phrase. He says, though I wasn't guilty of what I was being accused of, I wasn't innocent in general, and I'm not trying to invalidate any of those people. Which brings up, it's a boatload of contradictions that brings up several questions. You just said there aren't any victims of James Charles, and you were not guilty of what you were being accused of, though you previously apologized to the victims. Also, if you didn't do what you were accused of doing, messaging minors, and you say it was ultimately your own fault, what are you not innocent of? I mean, you said that you messaged minors, but you did it unintentionally. He's trying to make the point that he didn't knowingly message minors, and he's continuing the narrative of him being lied to, which I personally just don't believe. I just don't believe it. And I don't believe anyone has that much bad luck over and over and over again. And they're just that easy to deceive. And or like willingly, and at a certain point, like you are making a choice to be deceived in that way. If you're even being lied to in the first place, I just don't believe you are. That's my opinion. That is my opinion. He says that the people making things up to get clout and likes invalidate those that were affected in the first place. The victims he apologized to, but just now said don't actually exist because he was lied to, even though it's all ultimately his own fault. Got it. He says it also makes it harder for people coming forward in the future to come forward if it's so easy to fabricate situations, which, to be fair, is a valid point. He admits that he does not have any screenshots to support what he's saying, and he knows what he needs to work on and hopes people will let him learn from his mistakes. And we love using the word mistakes when it comes to inappropriately communicating with minors. He says he shouldn't have used the word desperate, which then became a meme that he was, again, somehow aware of, even though he wasn't on social media. And he talks about his desire to live... I don't know why I mentioned so many things multiple times. I don't know if he mentioned it multiple times or if, like, I I think I may have written part of the script from memory, and then I went back through the videos, and then I repeated some stuff. But yeah, he mentioned the Hannah Montana double life. He wants to be a normal person, even though he consistently seems to pursue relationships with his own followers. He talks about asking everyone for IDs and says it's apparently working great, but he knows he needs to do so much more to protect himself, and he's learned everything from mistakes. And he talks about some of the mistakes that he's learned things from and the bad experiences. So he talks about guys taking pictures of him in secret and asking guys to leave their phones at the front door when they come over. And he talked about having a guy over his house, apparently like a first meeting, which I can't even lie. I have absolutely done that. I'm not even gonna judge. I have absolutely my last ex-boyfriend, honestly, our first in-person meeting was hooking up at my house. So I am not one to throw stones, okay? I wouldn't do that today, but I've definitely done something like that. But anyway, asking a guy to leave once he was making him uncomfortable and being hit by him, which is not okay. In any situation, point blank period. That's not okay. That is insanely dangerous. It is. And that's probably like the woman in me, but also the woman in me fucking not even 2 years ago put myself in that similar situation, and I've put myself in a lot of risky situations. So like, I'm not going to judge him for that very specific thing, just because that would be very hypocritical of me. I will also be calling myself out for something else going near probably the end of this video, to avoid also being extremely hypocritical, because I noticed in the past some behavior of myself that in retrospect I am disgusted by, and I hate that I did it. And it was entirely my own fault. And thankfully the person was legal. It was a legal adult. It was an actual legal adult, but it really does not provide much comfort. But stay tuned for that. My videos are chaptered, but I'm going to call myself out for some shit in this video too, okay? I never want to seem like I'm just speaking from a high horse. I always want to be as nuanced and well-rounded and as self-aware as possible. But, continuing. He addresses the dating app thing. He says he has been banned from Tinder and Hinge for supposedly catfishing as himself. He says he has been on Raya, but conversations from that were leaked, and they then denied his request to rejoin. He addresses the people saying he should date a celebrity and says that he would love to, including that he would love to because if they had money so he wouldn't have to pay for everything. Which, sister side note, but I just personally call bullshit on that. Again, like, I feel personally, this is my speculation, like he gets a sense of power and leverage by paying for everything. Because it's then something he can use against the person of like, well, I paid for your flight. Well, I did this for you. Well, you're staying at my house. Even though he really seems like the classic archetype of someone that will offer to do things unprompted and then use it against you the second you don't do what they want. Like, manipulators do. He says he would love to date a celebrity, but the prospects in that area are really small, and he's friends with, apparently, most of the 20 to 25-year-old queer men in Hollywood. He says he's going to be patient, but he wants to be able to talk to people and is just going to be a lot more careful, which, like, you're allowed to talk to people. Just stop viewing your fan base as a dating pool. Okay, I'll call myself out for the thing here. It's fine. So, at some point when I think I had just turned 23. Yes, I just turned 23, and I worked with this dude who was 18 at the time, and I found out he was 18, and I didn't pursue anything with him, and I really hated that I was attracted to him. And then, like, a few months later, when I was still 23 and he had just turned 19, we kind of flirted a little more, and conversation became a little more suggestive. And I sent, like, not safe for work photo, literally just, like, me in shapewear. It was just me in, like, I wasn't showing anything. It was just me in some kind of, like, tight shorts because he wanted to see me in some more form-fitting shorts. And then I just grossed myself out enough, essentially, and also was reminded of the mental age difference and the maturity difference. And just nothing ended up being followed through on, and just nothing ended up happening from there, and it just died. And I'm really glad that it didn't end up going anywhere. But I look back on that, I'm like, what the fuck was I doing? What the fuck was I doing? And that was because I have called out age gaps in comments on videos that I've honestly since gone back and deleted, because I was like, I am being a hypocrite. I'm being a hypocrite. But maybe two things can be true at the same time, because I can judge like what is, 17 and 21 is different. That is different than 19 and 23. That is different than 19 and 23. That's still a very big gap. And I don't like the fact that I was entertaining doing something with someone with that kind of a mental gap. And I just feel like I would be remiss in not mentioning that in this video. And that's not a very flattering thing to admit, but I'm just going to be honest about that I did entertain that kind of age gap situation. And I'm really glad it didn't end up happening. And I look back and I'm like, ew, 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 ew. And I would never, ever, ever do that, especially as the person with like more power in that situation. Like, I dated someone when I was 20 and they were 24. And I feel like that's different. I feel like that was different. The person also, I feel like it makes it worse about the fact that like the person had just recently turned 19 too. And I was like 23 and a half. It was a very significant gap. And I'm not proud of it. I'm not proud of that. So, I look back at that and I'm really disgusted. And I'm 26 now, and I really could not see myself talking to anyone younger than maybe like 23. So yeah, that's, I think, my throat's really tired, and that's it for 2021. So I feel like that is a good place to put a pin in this story for now, as we are out of our 32-page script. We are currently on page 20. So we are about 60% of the way through this story. So I will see y'all at a later date, probably tomorrow. Bye for now.
Hello, lovely people. It's Victoria. Welcome to my channel, or welcome back to my channel. I may or may not be talking really quietly because, well, one, it's almost 12:30 at night. It's just past midnight on December 26th. And I hope you guys had a very, very Merry Christmas if you celebrate. But I am using one of my Christmas presents that I'm so freaking excited about. I'm gonna lower the camera so you can see her. I got a Blue Yeti microphone. Oh my god, I'm in love with her. And so I've been testing it out, and I can actually like record audio with headphones on, and I could probably do like the one ear on, one ear off thing, but I think I kind of like it just like this. So I just feel like this is gonna up my audio game like 100 points. Oh my god, I'm so excited about it. So because of that, I'm still getting used to kind of recognizing how loud I'm actually talking, so that might be an adjustment, but like the audio is so clear. Oh my god, I'm obsessed. I'm in love with it. I'm in love. And I feel like that might actually incentivize me to film more, even though I have been filming more and I have a lot more videos that I want to film. I ended up not filming my holiday mocktails video, but I think I might make a video just talking about the drinks that I ended up having today, because I did not drink today. I got through Christmas without drinking. Fuck yes. All right. If anyone else is trying to stay sober through the holidays, let me know. And I feel your pain and I'm rooting for you. So anyway, this is a long-winded addendum in what's going to be, I think, probably the end of this video, to say I have made the official decision to split the James Charles video into two parts. You probably heard me say earlier in the video, this video is going to be like 4 hours long. I still have a lot of footage that I need to edit down, but I wanted to do it in like one giant video, like 3.5 hours. But honestly, just with the timing that it's going to take me to edit it, and also I just felt like I kind of arrived at a good intermission, a good kind of halfway point to where I'm at. So, because we just ended pretty much just after the 2021 allegations. So I feel like that's a good sort of midway
point in order to circle back around to where we are now. So I just feel like story-wise it makes more sense, and instead of, you know, waiting a week or however long in order to get the full video out to you guys, I just felt like it would make more sense, and also just like keep my morale a little steadier in order to just get content out to you guys sooner. And I'm also still just really proud of this video. So it's going to be a 2-part concept. I have made that decision for myself, and I will try to have the second part out like within a week of uploading this one. So this ended up being a little bit of a jagged structure, but I really appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for the support. We are so close to hitting 300 subscribers, which is my goal for the end of 2025. I would love to hit 300 subscribers by the end of the year. But thank you to any of y'all that continue to watch and support my videos. Like those that have watched regularly, like Kirby, you are the best. I appreciate you so much that you still come back to my videos. You totally don't have to, and you still do, and just it means so much to me. To just anyone that's finding me for the first time and just deciding to stick around, or if you don't, like literally anyone that's just watching my videos, like I can't say it enough. I appreciate you guys so much, and I hope you had a wonderful, wonderful Christmas, and I hope you have an amazing New Year, and I just wish the best for you, and I appreciate you, and I hope to see you next time. And I'm so excited about my microphone. I might end up finally starting that ASMR channel that I have been talking about on and off for forever, because I love ASMR content, and I have made some way back in the day and I love it. But yeah, also I did Christmas nails. One of my nails is a little chipped, but Christmas nails. All right. Mwah.